Welcome to the daily Rambam class. We are up to chapter 4 of the laws of shgogos. Before we get into today's chapter, it is Thursday, so let us start with a look at where we are up to in the Rambam. One moment. Here we go. We are learning the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, which has 14 volumes. We are now in volume number 9, the book of Korbanos, sacrifices. The Rambam's set has approximately 1,000 chapters, and the book of Korbanos is one of the smallest. Volume number 9 has only 6 subjects and only 45 chapters. Let's take a look. It looks like it is almost the smallest book in the entire Rambam. Let's take a look at the book of Korbanos. We have 6 subjects in the book of Korbanos. We first learned about the Korban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, and then we learned about the Chagiga, celebrating Yom Tov. We then learned about the Chayros, the firstborn animals, and now we're learning about shgogos. If a person makes a mistake, it's a large topic. There's 15 chapters, some of which will be quite complex as far as like we'll see later in today's chapter. Today's chapter only has 5 halachas, but they're quite complex. We'll see. It speaks about how a person can do one violation and be liable on multiple accounts. So look, just a little bit more of a breakdown of the 15 chapters and speak about mistakes. The first 3 chapters, the last 3 days, you learned about which sins require the chatos, the sin offering. Over the next 4 days, 4, 5, 6, 7, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, Sunday, we will be learning about if a person violates multiple sins, how many offerings do they need to bring, all different types of scenarios. I'm sure, I don't know if somebody's ever thought, well, I've already broken Shabbos, so that now it doesn't make a difference. That obviously isn't true. We'll learn more about that. We'll learn about the Asham Talei, which is a sin brought for possible sin. Asham Vadai for specific sins, Olam Hayored that goes according to a person's financial means, making the holy impure, if the Beis Din made a mistake, and finally a special korban that's brought for the Nasi. But for today's chapters, over the next 4 days, we'll be learning about multiple transgressions. Let's take a look at chapter 4. This will be our first diagram, but before we get there, let's take a look at the text inside. When a person performs many transgressions, for which one is required to bring a sin offering, in one lapse of awareness, meaning without realizing he sinned in multiple ways, but it was all in one lapse. So a guy woke up one morning and he really was just getting everything wrong until he came back to his senses. So he is liable for a sin offering for every individual transgression. Even if he performs all the 43 transgressions that we listed in one lapse of awareness, he is liable for 43 sin offerings. He will need to bring a whole farm to the Beis Hamikdash, almost. This has an important message for us. You know, people often talk about, I either am religious or I'm not religious, I'm from or not, or what. It doesn't work like that. Just because somebody is not religious, it's not like one thing. Each thing we do makes a difference. Each mitzvah we do makes a difference, and every sin that we do makes a difference. And so it doesn't help to say he's not religious. If he did 43 sins, he'll have to bring 43 cows, and this applies today as well. please God, Mashiach will come today. When Mashiach comes, we will need to bring a sin offering for our different transgressions. How exactly it will work when Mashiach comes, that's another discussion. But the point is that every mitzvah makes a difference, and conversely, every sin makes a difference. And that's why he needs to bring so many sin offerings, because every offering helps him rectify the damage of his neshama in that particular way. So if a person sinned 23 times, then it means he caused his 23, in 23 ways he harmed his neshama. And therefore he needs to bring these 23 offerings, each one brought separately, for him to think about each one of the actions that he took and how they can be rectified. So this is if he did 43 different deeds, but it actually gets even more complicated. If a person performed one deed for which he is liable many transgressions, right? You have that sometimes in civil courts, in sentencing. A person can do one act, but that same act was multiple criminal offenses, and then the person, each of those offenses will be calculated in as far as his sentencing. So everything comes from the Torah. The same thing happens in the Torah. A person can do one deed and is liable for many transgressions. Every transgression he transgressed will bring another offering, even though it was one act. Provided that all of the prohibitions involved either take effect at the same time, or the second prohibition, which doesn't happen at the same time, causes the entity to be forbidden to additional people, or the scope of the latter prohibition encompasses other entities together with the entity that was originally prohibited. In other words, once a person is already liable for this particular account, for this particular action, on one account, we're not going to make him liable on another account unless he violated both accounts at the same time, or each account had something to add to the severity, either to more people or more items. He's going to spell this out. What is implied? Somebody took a consecrated animal, meaning something that was holy, that was meant to be used as an offering, and he shechted it for personal use. And where did he do this? He did this outside of the Beis Hamikdash. When did he do it? He did it on Shabbos. Why did he do it? For the sake of serving idols. So it was one action. He shechted the animal that is liable on 3 accounts, and he'll need to bring 3 offerings, 3 animals. One for slaughtering consecrated animals outside the temple courtyard. One of the 630 mitzvahs is that one is not allowed to take sacrificial meat and shecht it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Secondly, he broke Shabbos. And thirdly, he served an idol, and that all happened at once. But when do they all happen at once? Because when a person shechts, especially if it's a big bull, it might take a little bit of time until he completely completes the shchita, until he completely kills the animal. So he would be liable on all 3 accounts if he only had in mind that this be used as an idol, as idolatry, at the conclusion of the shchita, when the shchita takes full effect. But if he already considered it as serving an idol from the moment he started cutting, from the moment he started shechting, so then he's already disqualified the whole animal. The whole animal has now just been used for idolatry. And therefore he will not be liable for slaughtering an animal outside the Beis Hamikdash until a later point, until he slits both pipes. But at that point, the animal is already disqualified and is already liable. Or either both pipes or majority of both pipes. So at this point, he's shechting something that's already idolatry, so you won't be liable of the other accounts. That's why we say all 3 liabilities need to happen at once, so each needs to have an added dimension. Or if it was a bird that he was shechting, which was a sin offering, and half of its windpipe was previously cut, So once the shchita happens, when it's just over half, so if he just did a slight cut, which made it just over half of the pipe, and he did so on Shabbos for a false idol, so then he would be liable on all three accounts, because now that it all happening at once, because he doesn't need to shecht a while until he reaches that breaking point. It all happens instantaneously because the animal's neck had already had a cut. Similarly, a person who performs forbidden labor on Yom Kippur, that falls on Shabbos, would need to bring two offerings, right? If the person drives to shul on Yom Kippur, that's on Shabbos, he'll need to bring one offering because he broke Yom Kippur, and the second because he broke Shabbos. Also, a person who is intimate with the wife of his brother. Okay, now I gotta put a little bit of a advisory over here. When we talk about forbidden intimacy in halacha, it's important to focus on it from a very legal, non-personal perspective, definitively. Because obviously, if we talk about the emotional and moral consequences, they're completely beyond, they're through the roof. And that's not what we're addressing over here. What we're addressing over here is the actual crimes. On what front the actual violation takes place. If in addition to these violations, he also causes psychological, emotional, whatever type of other damage, he'll need to pay for that too. But now we're talking about the act itself. So it's important to kind of take it out of the association and just look at it from a legal perspective. That's the approach that I find I need to take when learning these particular laws. And once I do that, I don't have a problem, because it's I kind of make it dry. And then because thank God, we're not talking about actual scenarios. If we're dealing with scenarios, God forbid, it would be much more heavy. So here's a scenario where a person was intimate with his wife's brother, his sister-in-law. His brother's still alive, and she was in a state of niddah.
The wife of his brother.
Pardon?
You said his wife's brother, the wife of his brother. You said
the wife of his brother, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The wife of his brother, his sister-in-law. So he must bring 3 sin offerings. 1, because he was intimate with a married woman, regardless of who it was. Secondly, because she was his brother's wife, which is a second mitzvah in the Torah, which is that a person is not allowed to marry his brother's wife, even after he dies, if they had children. And thirdly, and these are 2 prohibitions that take effect at the same time. And thirdly, because she was in a niddah state, she hadn't gone to mikveh, which is a prohibition that forbids additional entities, which makes her forbidden not only to another man, but even to her husband. So since that added offense affects additional people, therefore he's liable for that as well, even if it wasn't all at the same time. This since it would apply to a husband as well. In the same vein, one who sodomizes, meaning a man is intimate with another man, which we know is a strict biblical prohibition. Somebody who sodomizes his father is liable for 2 sin offerings. 1, because of the prohibition to not reveal the nakedness of your father, and 1, because of the prohibition to not lie with a man. So even though it was 1 act, he's violated 2 of the 630 mitzvahs. Somebody who sodomizes his father's brother is liable for 2 sin offerings. 1, as the Torah says, do not reveal the nakedness of your father's brother, and 1, because of the general prohibition against sodomy. When one sodomizes a male and has a male sodomize him at the same time, and again, we're looking at this from a clearly legal perspective, and we are given the strength to do so, he is liable for only 1 sin offering, even though there are 2 people involved, or 2 bodies involved. Since it was 2 sins with the same 2 people, then he only needs to bring 1 offering. Or I should say, for each person, the 2 sins are with the same 1 person. Do not lie with a man, which makes both positions equally liable. Similarly, when one sodomizes an animal and has an animal sodomize him at the same time, he's liable 1 sin offering, it's the same violation that's being violated, and so one offering would be required. One is deemed equally liable for either position of intimacy when engaging in relations with an animal or a male. So it doesn't make a difference how this intimacy takes place, as long as there is proper intimacy, then he is liable. It's possible that there be an instance where a person engages in a single act of intimacy and is liable 8 sin offerings. Okay, let's see how this works. See if you can help Cup over here. Maybe I'll pull up the diagram now and see if that helps us. Oh. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it's not so clear. Let's see how it works. Let's see if we can get this a little bit bigger, actually. Okay, if this is not working, we will leave it. Just give me one more moment. Okay. Jacob begat a daughter whose name was Timnah. So we'll try to follow the diagram over here. Where's Jacob? Here's Jacob. Jacob had a daughter, and her name was Timnah. Okay, Jacob has a wife Zilpah, and he has a daughter by the name of Timnah. From his wife Zilpah. Okay. Then Laban came along, and he married Timnah. He married Jacob's daughter, and had a daughter by the name of Sarah. Okay, so Jacob gave birth to a daughter Timnah, and his daughter Timnah married Laban, who was actually her father's father-in-law. Speak about that in a moment, and had a daughter Sarah. Laban does not have any daughters other than Rachel. So Laban's only daughter is right here. She's Rachel. Thus, Sarah is the daughter of Jacob's daughter Timnah, and Sarah is also his wife's sister on her father's side. Yaakov's wife Rachel's sister, because Rachel's father Laban gave birth to her. So Sarah is both Jacob's granddaughter and his wife's sister, because it's Rachel's father's daughter. There are 2 prohibitions that take effect at the same time. Then Sarah went ahead and she married Reuven, which is one of Jacob's sons. So Jacob's granddaughter, this is all obviously we're just borrowing the names. So Sarah marries Jacob's son. She became forbidden to Jacob's other sons, and thus became forbidden to Jacob as well, on an additional account, and his son's wife.
Sarah is Jacob's granddaughter.
In this diagram, yes. Because Jacob had Timnah, and Timnah had Sarah.
Yeah.
We try to see in how many ways Sarah is related to Jacob. So that if Jacob does one prohibited act of intimacy with Sarah, he's going to be liable for 8 of the 613 mitzvahs. Because she's basically forbidden to him in 8 different ways. So when Sarah married Reuven, she became forbidden to Jacob's other sons, because they're all her brother-in-law. And thus became to Jacob as well as his son's wife, sisters-in-law. If Reuven died or divorced her, and then Sarah married Jacob's maternal brother. So now Sarah marries Jacob's maternal brother, who is maternal brother. So that would be Jacob's mother would be Rivka, and Rivka's brother would probably be Jacob's maternal.
No.
Let's try this again.
Ishmael.
Sarah married Jacob's brother. So Jacob's brother, maternal brother, would be Rivka's child. So that's this person over here. He's not named. Or this one person over here.
Oh.
So Sarah now, after marries Reuven, after marrying her grandfather's son, she goes and marries her grandfather's maternal brother, which is right here. She marries him second. So first she marries Reuven, then she marries, in this diagram it is Eliav, which is Jacob's maternal brother. So since she became forbidden to Jacob's other brothers through this marriage, she becomes forbidden to Jacob on another count, because she is the wife of his brother. If her husband died or divorced her, and Sarah went through a third marriage, and now she married Yishmael. Since she becomes forbidden to Yishmael's other brothers, so what is Yishmael to Yaakov? Yishmael is Yaakov's father's brother. So now she married her grandfather's uncle. Or Yaakov's uncle. So she becomes forbidden to Jacob, and since she is the wife of his brother, if her husband died or divorced and herself married Yishmael, since she becomes forbidden to Yishmael's other brothers, a further prohibition takes effect with regards to Jacob. The prohibition against relations with the wife of his father's brother. If Yishmael died, and now Sarah became eligible to undergo Yibum with Isaac, and Isaac transgressed and performed Yibum with her. So after 3 marriages, Sarah now does Yibum to Isaac, which was her late third husband's brother, who she wasn't allowed to do Yibum with, because it's also, he's part of the family in other ways. You can only do Yibum if it's not violating in other ways. But she went in and she did do Yibum with Yitzchak. Even though she is forbidden to him as a secondary relation, since she becomes forbidden to Jacob's other paternal brothers, she also becomes forbidden to Jacob because she is his father's wife, and because she is a married woman. For these are 2 prohibitions that take effect at the same time. Now, if Jacob acted inadvertently and was intimate with Sarah when she was in the Niddah state, during the lifetime of his father Isaac, of her husband Isaac, which is his father, and during the lifetime of Rachel, Jacob's wife, he is liable for 8 sin offerings because of his relations with her. She is his daughter's daughter, Timnah's daughter, his wife's sister, Zilpah's father, Laban's child, his wife's sister, his daughter-in-law, because she was married to his son Reuben, the wife of his brother, because she was married to him too,
Yeah.
the wife of his father's brother, because she was married to him too, the wife of his father, because she married Yitzhak through Yibum, a married woman, and in the Niddah state. And so she'll be liable on 8 accounts. They'll be liable on 8 accounts, 8 of the 613 mitzvahs through one action. Okay, we'll see what the quiz requires us to know. We'll see how on what level the quiz is. Let's move through the next 3 halachos. Back to just the text. Or leave it as is, but now to keep it simple. In all situations when a woman who is forbidden as a relative becomes forbidden again due a prohibition that causes the entity to be forbidden to additional people, those additional people must be alive at the time so that she will be forbidden to them. And then once she's forbidden to them, she is forbidden to him on an additional account. If, however, they are not alive, we do not say that since this man would have brothers or sons, she would have been forbidden. Rather, since he doesn't, so there isn't an additional prohibition that takes effect to additional people, so it doesn't apply to that person either if there was a none at the same time. Halacha number 4, the following laws apply when a man is married to 3 women and is intimate with the mother of one of them. Okay, let's try to see this inside. I mean, we don't have all day. We'll try and see how far we can go. This is the next scenario over here. You know what? I'm happy to share the PowerPoint if you ask me. I'm just going to run through the text now. You'll see how well you could do. Here's the diagram. You can follow along. So a person is married, when a man is married to 3 women and is intimate with the mother of one of them, so one of his mothers-in-law. And she is the mother of the second one. And the mother of the father of the third wife. Even though this elderly woman is his mother-in-law, the mother of his mother-in-law, and the mother of his father-in-law, and these are 3 distinct prohibitions, and they all took effect at the same time, he would only bring 1 sin offering. Why? The rationale is that they are close relatives, is a depraved design with regards to relations with a woman and her daughter, her son's daughter, and her daughter's daughter. Thus, the Torah considered the 3 as one body. Therefore, the 3 prohibitions are considered as one. So, although he violated 3 of the 613 mitzvahs, they're grouped as one, and therefore he would only need to bring 1 offering. They're considered all as one sin. Final halacha number 5. If, however, let's go open the diagram. Here we go. If, however, one is intimate with his sister, who is also the sister of his father and the sister of his mother, he is liable for 3 sin offerings as implied by the law. He revealed the nakedness of his sister. One might infer that he is liable for relations with his sister independently, even though she is also the sister of his mother and the sister of his father. How is such a situation possible? So we say if a person lived with somebody who was his sister and his father's sister and his mother's sister, then she would be liable on multiple accounts. So how is it possible? A man was intimate with his mother. So it starts over here. Here. This guy was intimate with his mother. This is his mother, right? Yeah. And begat 2 daughters. No, so I guess it starts over here. This man was intimate with his mother and had 2 daughters. He was intimate with one of these daughters and begat a son. If this illegitimate child will be intimate with the other daughter, who is the sister of his illegitimate mother, who is his paternal sister, who is also the maternal sister of his father, he will be liable for 3 sin offerings. Similar laws apply in all analogous situations. Let us see how far we can get with the test. These are definitely from the most complicated halachas that exist as far as keeping track of who's who. Question number 1. How many sin offerings does one bring for inadvertently performing forbidden labor on Yom Kippur that fell on Shabbos? 1, 2, or 3?
3.
3.
2, right? Both for Shabbos and for Yom Kippur. If one inadvertently performed many transgressions in the same lapse of unawareness, how many sin offerings does he bring? 1 for all of them, or sin offering for each transgression?
Each transgression.
Correct. When is one liable for slaughtering a consecrated animal outside of the temple? As soon as he makes the initial cut of the pipes, once one of the organs has been cut, or only once the majority of the 2 organs has been cut?
Yeah, number 3.
Good. Well done. Okay. Oh, they completely left out those last few halachas in the quiz, maybe for good reason. If one is liable for slaughtering, is one liable for slaughtering a consecrated animal outside of the temple if it is not fitting to be offered as a sacrifice? I believe not, because we said that if he correct. We said if it first became an idol, then he's not liable on that account. Well done. Thank you so much for joining.